What's up guys, Koma here, and today I have another new Destiny build for everybody. So this will be Chromatic Fire. Chromatic Fire this season got a brand new buff, where it now ties into all the different subclasses. And the cool thing about this is all the subclass tie-ins have elemental effects, so now you can apply the subclass terms that we have here. And I wanted to go over quite a few of them that we could utilize in kind of just our everyday kind of activities, or even possibly an in-game, because I've been looking at some to replace my Starfire protocol recently, and Chromatic Fire is making me really even consider it. So, with Chromatic Fire, I should at least talk about how this exotic piece works. So Chromatic Fire basically, let me throw on Arc Reserves here. When you on Precision Final Blows, kills from kinetic weapons create an explosion that deals damage on the element of your subclass and applies elemental effects. So, say if I'm on Solar, if I get a precision kill with a kinetic weapon, it'll create a kind of like a cheaper version of Incandescent. So there's a few subclasses that I've noticed this can be utilized on, and I kind of picked out a few weapons that we could utilize as well. So I kind of want to go over everything quickly and then kind of just come back to it whenever it kind of, you know, when it starts to become necessary. So first of all, my favorite weapon types with this build are hand cannons and scouts. More namely, I got some lower end, some higher end here. First of all, Crimson. I'm sure everyone is very familiar with the hand cannons that we will be talking about, but Crimson specifically, it's a 3-round burst hand cannons. You're mainly going to be hitting headshots with this hand cannon, and kills with this weapon heal the welder, and precision kills also refill the magazine. And with the catalyst, you're getting some extra range on there. The problem with this one is that in high end content, this thing doesn't hit very hard. It has good range. The recoil is a little bit wonky unless you have the ornament, the blue ornament. I don't have it, but I think it's being sold for Bright Dust relatively soon in a few weeks, so I'd keep an eye out for that if you really want to consider using this thing. So just a good little choice, because you're getting a kill. It's not only refilling your magazine, but it's also healing you, and you're also proccing whatever subclass verb that you currently have your subclass on. Going on to a legendary variation, you can have Fatebringer. Fatebringer is probably the best 140, I want to say, at least within the kinetic slot. You can run to something like Explosive Payload or Adrenaline Junkie, or I do have another one here. Let me go look for that very quickly. I think it's something Kill Clip. Another one is Explosive Payload Kill Clip. You can even get rewind rounds on it too. So this comes with the Vault of Glass raid. I have the Time Lost version here, which is the version of, it's basically the Adept version, so I can put any of the Adept mods on here if I so want to. But I'm running a minor spec, considering we're kind of using this for low end ad clear. We have Firefly on there, and I'll talk about that in a moment. In the higher end content, I have two different selections here. I have Ace of Spades and I have Hawkmoon. First of all, I want to go over Hawkmoon because I think Hawkmoon would be far more useful than Ace of Spades, and I'll kind of get into it in a moment. So Hawkmoon has I think pretty much everything here is randomized. If not, it's snapshot sights and heavy grip. I could be wrong with everything. Generally, it really doesn't matter what you want here, but I think you can get Outlaw in this column, so it'd probably be your kind of preferred choice in that column. But final blows and precision hits with Hawkmoon grants a stacks of pure causal charge. The final round in the magazine deals damage based on the number of stacks, and stowing Hawkmoon on the final round removes this bonus. So basically, you're just gonna chain precision hits over and over until that final round hits, and then you're gonna be able to nail like a high-end target. So the reason I chose this one is, well, number one, it's also a hand cannon and it's an exotic, but also the paracausal charges are going to make it deal so much damage that generally against some, unstoppable champions, this thing's going to be hitting extremely hard. Even against low end ads, even if you tap one or two of them into the head and then you decide you want to use the last shot on a smaller ad, you can guarantee the proc of any of the effects that I will be covering here in a moment. So Hawkman's a good choice. If you have the Catalyst, it just increases your magazine, reload speed, handling, and weapon range based on the number of paracausal charges. So it's relatively good. So the last one would be Ace of Spades. Now, Ace of Spades hasn't been my particularly favorite, and I think I have some footage of it, and I will play it right now. Ace's Firefly perk causes enemies to explode before the effect of the Chromatic Fire. So the problem with Ace is that you're never going to really be benefiting too much off of said of Chromatic Fire. So Ace is there only if you want to run, Ace of Spades at all. But the benefit that Ace of Spades does is Memento Mori, reloading after kill, loads the magazine with a few extra damage bullets, grants radar while aiming down sights, basically giving it like a really OP kill clip. And whenever you have the Catalyst, Firefly deals more damage while Memento Mori is active, which just kind of also plays a role in basically not at all doing its job very well. So, and going into the scouts, the only things I have here is Randy's Throwing Knife and Transfiguration. Transfiguration being the Last Wish Scout Rifle. Probably, and being a high impact frame means that you're really going to be going for those headshots, and it's going to be really hitting hard. Preferably not having kinetic trimmers. I think you can get Rampage in this column, so you can have Rapid Hit Rampage. But anything precision related would work. There's also Randy's Throwing Knife. For this one, I just have Zim Moment Kill Clip. I've been hunting for a better roll. So, it's totally your call and whatever you want to run. But, for your specials, I would highly just recommend, at least if you're playing in-game, run Path the Least, or run a Trace Rifle. Here's all the different Trace Rifles that I'd highly recommend, at least, utilizing. If you're running an exotic, so whether or not being Crimson, Ace of Spades, Hawkmoon, if you want to run Dead Man's Tail or Jade Rabbit as an exotic scout, if you have Path of Least Resistance or Hollow Denial, you're welcome to run that. I will be covering both of them in this video simply because, well, number one, it's very much so an arc season, and we also got some Void stuff to actually talk about later. But you can always pick up Retraced Path from Dares of Eternity. This is a relatively decent scout, sorry, not scout, but trace. I believe it gets 1 for all, which is very nice ad clear in the grand scheme of things. Let me double check it so I can visualize its perks real quick. So it also gets Incandescent, yeah, and 1 for all. You can get something like Perpetual Motion, Feeding Frenzy, and Subsistence. So you can get some really nice perks on this thing that kind of make it kind of a demon with some ad clear to pair with your whatever effect you're going for. But you also have Acacia's Dejection, which is from the return to rewind rounds in the first column, but then you can also get like Incandescent or I believe it's Incandescent, unless that goes in the first column. Let me double check that too. Yeah, it's Incandescent in the second column, but you can get stuff like Vorpal, you get Target Lock, Keep Away. There's some really great perks for this Trace Rifle if you don't already have it. But if you can't get your hands on it, then you can go Retrace Path. But if you just want to go with something like Fatebringer, you can swap to something like Wave Splitter, which, granted, Wave Splitter has been pretty interesting. It's more in the scopes of PvP, but thanks to the very huge generation of orbs that we can actually get our hands on, this actually comes much more into play. Or if you want to play a more supportive role and not even need to run your Overload Trace Rifle, you can run Div. And, this will give you and your teams like a little crit bubble, and you can just kind of benefit off that. Or you can use probably the best Arc Trace Rifle Cold Heart, which basically this thing just has, I believe it's just a very strong version of target lock. So Cold Heart also is kind of worth looking at as well. Your heavy can be whatever you want it to be. If you want to run 2 legendaries, you can run something like Thunderlord for this season, which is really cool. Anything that you really desire to be in that slot. So now that we kind of gone over the weapons, I also want to go over the subclasses, because the subclasses are very important to how any of this works. Because your subclass will really determine what effect Chromatic Fire is going to be doing here. So there is only 3 that I really want to cover, and there's only 2 main ones that I would really even consider. First of all, we're going to go over Broodweaver, because Strand is the newest subclass, and I really wanted to see what we could do with this. And there were some pretty interesting effects I could figure out when running just any random lost sector. First of all, I'm running Wonder and Mindspun Invocation, and I'm running my Shackle Grenade, and the fragments are Thread of Warding, Thread of Mind, Thread of Continuity, and Thread of Generation. Now, I noticed when running this, when you run Chromatic Fire with Strand, you have a Severing Burst. Now, if you're familiar with Strand at all, you'll know that we do have a Thread of Isolation thing here, where it says landing rapid precision hits emits a Severing Burst from the target. Now, Severing will reduce their damage significantly, meaning that they will be doing less damage to you. Now, if you're in a higher end constant, you get a precision kill and you manage to, spread the sever around, that's great, because, if you're also running, Thread of Warding, you're also getting Woven Mail. So overall, the enemies will be doing generally more damage, or less damage against you. Which is also really nice, because if you somehow manage to get this to roll with an alternative to Fatebringer, or an alternative with the Fatebringer, you can run Osmosis, which if you go to your regulator here, you'll notice that we have Unraveling. So whenever you have Unraveling or Woven Mail, you get Unraveling rounds. You just throw your grenade out and turn your Fatebringer to a Strand weapon. So it's really interesting to see how we can play that with it, and having Thread of Continuity means those Unravel effects are also going to have increased duration. And we're running Thread of Mind because we can also consume our Shackle Grenade with Mind Spunification, and any final blow actually suspends targets. So very strong kind of like thing going on here. Is it worth it? Probably not. This is just something that I was messing around with, and you could really even consider to look at. So yeah, it's there if you guys want to utilize it. Next up, I'm going to go to Arc, because Arc I think is the second best option here. I love running this with something like Ace of Spades, with Chromatic Fire. Now, I know I stated Ace of Spades earlier, it wasn't too useful in this case, but the reason I like Ace of Spades with Chromatic Fire is that with Arc, your explosions are going to be blinding enemies. So when I headshot an enemy, it'll blind them if they don't die by Memento Mori by default, or if some of the surrounding ads didn't die by Memento Mori. This gets some very good ad control. It's almost kind of just a better version of a blinding GL in a way. And also having, unstoppable hand cannon from the season also allows it to also take care of, unstops. But Crimson is also very nice with it, as Crimson can actually rapid fire, bullets, and you're going to be killing enemies more often. So you can really add control with Crimson and some lower end content. So going into my subclass, I have Electrostatic Mind, Arc Soul. I'm using a Skip Grenade, which you can use whatever grenade you want. Either Storm or Pulse is the preferred option. If you want more blinding, you can run Flashbang. If you're running this in PvP for whatever reason, you can run Lightning Grenade or Arc Bolt Grenade, and so on. I'm using Ball Lightning, but you're also welcome to use Chain Lightning. Ball Lightning is high-end content, and the fragments I'm using are Spark of Shock, Spark of Recharge, Spark of Resistance, and Spark of Ions. So you're going to get some ionic traces, you're going to be surrounded by combatants, you're more resilient to damage, while critically wounded, your melee grenades and your melee and grenade energy regenerates more quickly, and your arc grenades are going to be jolting targets. And of course, we're running Chaos Reach, because Chaos Reach got a really damn good buff. And thanks to the artifact mods, we got some very good arc stuff here, such as Electric Armor, Thunderous Retort, Amped Up, Shock and Awe, and Lightning Strikes Twice. And fun fact about Chromatic Fire is that if you damage or kill an enemy with the arc effect of Chromatic Fire, specifically an arc final blow, while you are amplified, will summon a burst of lightning that damages and drills targets. And also, if you just kill an enemy by default while you have the arc 3.0 blind effect, it also create a ionic trace for you as well, which I believe is from Electrostatic Mind. So some really cool synergy that's coming out of arc here. Really not what I expected, but some really cool stuff that you could generally run with arc. So totally your call on what you want to run in terms of your weaponry here. Now going over to Void. Void is the more interesting one, and I think it's the most what's the word I'm looking for here? Most important one. Now, I don't know what part of my brain thought this, but I thought whenever reading the reworks of the exotics, that I read Chromatic Fire as having a volatile explosion. Well, it doesn't. It has a weakened effect. And that is extremely strong. And there's a lot of reasons to get into that, but mainly I want to talk about the artifact perks for the Void. So we have Unto the Breach, which is defeating a Void debuff target creates a Void Breach where your Void subclass is equipped. Protective Breach, picking up a Void Breach gives you an overshield that refreshes your existing overshield. And Supernova, picking up a Void Breach causes your next source of Void damage to create a large weakening pulse. So these are kind of the most important options here that you generally want. And I'll tell you why. If you run something like Ace of Spades, and you're in a more high-end content, for high-end content right now I'm running Child of the Old Gods, and Chaos Accelerant. I'm running a Vortex Nade. I'm just running Cataclysm, but you're also welcome to run Vortex. But for my Echoes and my Fragments, I'm running Persistence, Remnants, Harvest, and Obscurity. So for here, Void debuffs applied to me have increased duration. That means my Overshield and Devour effects are going to be much longer but in normal means. My Lingering Grenade effects, such as my Vortex Grenade, will have increased duration. But most importantly, defeating weakened target creates an Orb of Power and a Void Breach. This does completely reduce my intellect, but it's also given me, an Orb of Power, so that's a different thing. And this does have a cooldown, just a heads up, so you can't just weaken targets repeatedly and generate a bunch of orbs. This does have a cooldown. And Echo of Obscurity, finish your final blows, and grant invisibility. If you want, you can also run Echo of Starvation, which will lower your recov, but when you pick up a Void Breach or an Orb of Power, it grants you Devour. So, you got some options here. So why Child the Old Gods with this, considering you are already pretty much, generating weakened things to our chest piece and precision hits? Well, for one, defeating a weakened target creates an Orb of Power, and giving Child the Old Gods some light here, it actually just got buffed with 2 fragment slots instead of 1, so now you can run an additional fragment, and when a target is being drained, you're granting grenade melee energy if Healing Rift, or health if running Empowering Rift, so you can run both Empowering and Healing. It's totally whatever your call, whatever you want here. And Chaos Accelerant, which is basically going to be making our grenade stronger. Now that's actually a benefit, because if you have the Conductive Cosmic Needle effect, and the target is affected by unravel, sever, or suspend. This means your arc and void abilities are going to be hitting extremely hard in comparison to what they would be normally. And pairing that with Child of the Old Gods on its weekend effect just means you're going to be doing much more damage by default. So generally, that is kind of everything. Okay, hold on. Future Coma here. Forgot to talk about a specific trace rifle within the Void category, and kind of sudden, but I need to talk about it. If you have a Hollow Denial or any special weapon that has Repulsor Brace, I'd highly recommend running this with your Kinetic, because Repulsor Brace will give you an additional Overshield or refresh your Overshield when you defeat a Void debuff target against an Overshield. And you know, if you're making volatiles or enemies weaken, or you know, if you're killing an enemy with Child of the Old Gods procced, this means that you're going to pretty much be getting a free Overshield. So yeah. Anyway, continuing. I have to talk about. I quickly do want to go over the idea of solar, as you know, it's kind of like a poor man's incandescent. And I will say this now, with Ace of Spades, this does not work because they're more than likely going to die with Memento Mori and the Firefly, so I wouldn't really recommend it with Ace of Spades, but you can run something like Crimson Hawkmoon, or even Fatebringer, Transfiguration, whatever you want, and you could do some really interesting stuff with it, but I can never really get it to work well. So I was generally running, let's see, this one needs to be swapped out. Let me quickly find it. That's what I was looking for. Emperor of Sinjin. Your class ability recharges faster when you scorch targets. So I thought this would be extremely useful, but it does not seem like it really was. Because the recharge of the Scorch is really not worth it, on top of like the benefits that you get just aren't worth it. You can also generate fire sprites, which are really cool, but the explosion effect is very small, and compared to something, and especially the Ace, the effect of Ace of Spades is going to be killing first, so you can't even Scorch. I really wish it was the other way around, but yeah, this is generally what I would do with it. It's just Emperor of Ashes, Emperor of Searing, Emperor of Resolve, and Emperor of Sinjin and Searing. Okay. And I'm still running a Fusion Nade because still the best Fusion Nade. That's pretty much all I gotta say for Solar. Going over to Stasis, I saw really no reason to run Stasis here. I generally love Stasis, and I hope this like entire subclass gets buffed sometime soon. But really, all that Chromatic Fire even considers doing here is just slow. That's all it does. Meaning, if you get rapid hits against like a big enemy or rapid kills around a big enemy, you can freeze them, but not really worth it. Especially against like Unstoppables when we're already running Ace, and maybe they're useful against Overload. I don't know. Anyway, what does the mods look like? Since you've kind of gotten the gist of what I am looking at. Well, generally, your mods are gonna really depend on your subclass. At least a few of them are. So, for example, your Helmet Siphon mod, which generally you're going to be running Kinetic, but if you want to focus more into your secondary weapon, so say if I'm running Path of Least Resistance from Season of the Seraph, I can go over here and I could equip my Arc Siphon. So therefore, I can generate orbs of power via my my special. And then generally you're probably going to want a Kinetic Loader, but you can throw something in like, I don't know, Impact Induction, and I have Fastball. Generally loaders aren't too necessary. 2 resistances of your calling, and you can throw out like a third, so you can throw in like Void, or you can just go with some reserves. I like reserves because generally I'm always running 100 Resil. And then for your thing here, you can spec out completely into your kinetic weapon. I would really generally even look at elemental charge, especially if you're on arc, because you're always going to be generating ironic traces and they're going to come towards you, which are very useful. But you can also throw on powerful attraction, which basically any nearby orbs of power that are around you basically automatically get collected when you have your class ability, which means if you're playing with allies, you're also generating tons of orb. You can basically pick up theirs. I'm kind of tired. Anyway, elemental charge I just think works much better on arc, so swap it out whenever you play void. If you can also just completely replace this with a holster too. Like if you're running 2 arc weapons, then you can run arc holster, and you can also get that benefit too. Opens this slot up a bit more too, because I don't know why, but kinetic weapon surges are just so expensive. I think they need to literally be dropped down to 2. But I don't know. That's something Bungie, I guess, just needs to look at. So yeah, I think that's generally everything. So yeah, that is generally everything about Chromatic Fire that I really wanted to talk about. I do think this is probably one of the best exotic reworks that we got this season. And there are a lot of exotic reworks, but I think this is generally the best one. And now that Starfire is kind of out of the way, it does open up far more selections, such as something like Seguin Alchemy, which maybe I'll look into. I just need a better rule because I need more resilience on my Seguin Alchemy. But yeah, I hope everyone really does enjoy Chromatic Fire. Generally, probably one of my favorite exotics right now. Though I still need to kind of test around and stuff because I still run Lunafactions in raids, and of course there's Sunbracers, which is probably bugged by the way, and there are plenty of other ways to spec into abilities. So anyway, if you guys enjoyed the video or found it informational or useful, feel free to like, share. That always works. If you have questions, feel free to throw them in the comments. And you can always subscribe if you want to stick around for more Destiny 2 builds. And I'm looking for all classes, so you just gotta stay tuned and see what comes up next. So yeah, catch you guys later.